Moves continue to be made weekly, but now that we're past Thanksgiving, I think it's time we check in on what drivers and what cars are still available as far as NASCAR silly season is concerned. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all had a fantastic week and a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Anyone get any good Black Friday NASCAR related deals? Let me know down in the comments. Every year, NASCAR silly season seems to get more and more unpredictable. It seems to be stretched longer and longer throughout the year. New driver contracts and most new sponsor contracts are shorter in length. You're not going to see many 10-year deals these days like you might in baseball, for example. With so many expiring contracts and things need to be renegotiated almost on a yearly basis, NASCAR silly season never seems to stop. It feels like all season is silly season, 24/7, 365, year after year, and 2020, with all of its ups and downs, with all of its curveballs, has been no different. So here we are, it's the end of November, and I will say most seats on the Cup Series side of things have been filled, especially most of the competitive seats. But that being said, there are still a few notable drivers who are yet to solidify their 2021 Cup Series plans. There's been a lot of movement in the NASCAR, Xfinity, and Truck Series in recent weeks, but there are still a lot of questions that remain. A brief recap on some of the recent moves we've seen, some in Cup, some in lower series. Ryan Preece is staying with JTG Doherty for another season. That was a question mark for a number of months, but that has been confirmed. We've talked about Live Fast Motorsports, the new team formed by BJ McLeod and Matt Tiff that bought Go Fast Racing's charter. BJ McLeod will be the driver for them full-time next year. The big news from a couple weeks ago was that John Hunter Nemechek was stepping away from Front Row Motorsports. We now know he is going to move to Kyle Busch Motorsports and race full-time in the trucks next year. But now there's an open seat theoretically at Front Row Motorsports that has yet to be filled. With Nemechek moving to KBM, Rafael Lessard is now moving to GMS Racing. It was announced this week that he will run 12 races with the team, and they might be able to fill out the rest of the schedule to let him go full-time if he can find sponsorship. It was confirmed shortly after the Phoenix finale, but Brett Moffitt will not return to GMS Racing next year. Instead, Chase Purdy will race full-time in that truck. A lot of Xfinity Series moves as well. Jeb Burton is moving to Colleague Racing. He's going to get a full-time opportunity to drive the number 10. Daniel Hemrick is going full-time racing again as well, this time with Joe Gibbs Racing. He takes over the number 18 car in Xfinity. What does that mean for Riley Herbst? Nothing has been confirmed just yet, but Frontstretch.com did report a couple weeks ago that Riley Herbst will take over the number 98 Stewart Haas Racing car, replacing Chase Briscoe, who we already know is moving to Cup next year. Those are some of the most notable moves that have been made recently. I know, it's just this year does not slow down even for a second. Now let's talk about some of the drivers still on the market, still looking to solidify their plans, and let's talk about some of the options that may be available to them, because there are still a number of Cup Series teams that have not announced their 2021 plans just yet. Let's start with some of the most notable drivers looking for rides. Corey LaJoie has still not confirmed what he's doing in 2021. There have been a number of rumors and even some reports that seem to direct him towards certain teams, but nothing has yet been confirmed. Ty Dillon is the other big question mark. His team, Germain Racing, of course, is shutting down. They sold their charter to 2311 Racing. Ty Dillon has not yet announced his 2021 plans, and in all honesty, it's been very quiet around that driver all off-season. There's a number of questions around drivers that raced, maybe part-time last year, or maybe drivers that raced for non-charter teams last year. There's some questions around what MBM Motorsports is going to do next year, what Gaunt Brothers Racing is going to do next year. We know Go Fast Racing is slimming down to a part-time schedule. They're only expected to run a few races next year. So drivers that may have driven for those teams, I'm thinking of drivers like Timmy Hill. I'm thinking of drivers like Josh Bilicki, Garrett Smithley, Joey Gase, JJ Yaley, James Davison. Brennan Poole raced full-time last year, ran for Rookie of the Year, actually. I don't believe he has announced any plans, at least has not confirmed any plans for 2021 just yet. And there's an intriguing report I saw recently from Racer.com. Santino Ferrucci, IndyCar Series driver, is reportedly exploring NASCAR Cup Series opportunities. He's also reportedly had conversations with Xfinity Series teams, putting some feelers out there. I don't know a whole lot about Santino Ferrucci, but I do know he's a fairly polarizing figure from the IndyCar world. I don't know a whole lot about Santino Ferrucci's driving career. I do know he used to race overseas. He's been in IndyCar the last couple of years. His numbers aren't spectacular. I don't know a whole lot about the car he's driving. I don't know how much that's him versus equipment. I'm not familiar with Santino Ferrucci too much, but here you have another IndyCar driver at least exploring NASCAR opportunities. I would be surprised to hear Ferrucci landing in the NASCAR Cup Series next year, especially on a full-time basis, maybe a part-time basis. Maybe he runs a road course, a couple of the road courses. Maybe he's able to run a super speedway at some point. I don't know, but I don't think we're going to see Ferrucci racing full-time in Cup next year. That would be shocking, unless he has some huge funding I don't know about. Again, I don't follow IndyCar nearly as closely as I follow NASCAR, so maybe y'all can fill me in on that one. Another wrench potentially being thrown into this year's NASCAR silly season. Now, there are a number of rides, some full-time, some chartered, and a number of part-time rides, non-chartered perhaps, that are still available for 2021 that have not announced any of their plans. Most notably, I would say, at least on paper right now, the most competitive team or ride available is the number 38 Front Row Motorsports Ford that John Hunter Nemechek just left. That's a car that finished 27th in points last year, got a few top 10s, was never really in contention to win. You know, that's a team that has not been great, before. So, I mean, it's an okay ride. It's a full-time ride. It's a stable job, at least. John Hunter Nemechek, when he announced he was moving to KBM last week, told the media that there was some conversations behind the scenes that he may not have been able to return to Front Row Motorsports next year. So it sounds like perhaps Front Row Motorsports has had a driver in mind for a number of weeks or even a number of months right now. They just have not yet announced anything. No idea if any pen has been put to paper, if they're just waiting for the right time to announce it, or if they're still searching, or if they're still even considering whether or not that 38 car is going to run. That is a chartered car. Perhaps they're looking at leasing a charter to a team that's looking to get in. I don't know. Maybe there's something they could do there, but I'm sure Front Row would like to run two full-time cars next year, but that remains to be seen for sure. The next two most notable cars, and you guys are going to laugh at me, but the two Spire Motorsports entries. Spire was able to acquire a second charter for next season, so they will have two full-time entries. I know Spire Motorsports is not the most exciting team in the world, but recent conversations, recent moves that they have made make it appear as though Spire is truly intent on trying, at least, to be more competitive, especially by the time the next-gen car rolls around and all the teams are forced to kind of reset. I mentioned Corey LaJoie. He is currently the favorite to land one of those Spire Motorsports cars. I'm a little surprised we haven't heard an announcement. It sounds like it's virtually a done deal. In fact, some outlets, like I think BeyondTheFlag.com, reported that it is a done deal. They're just waiting to announce it. Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal reported a number of weeks ago that Corey LaJoie was the front runner to land at Spire, and that Spire Motorsports was looking at forming a technical alliance with Hendrick Motorsports. And that's what makes this extremely interesting, because 2021 is a gap year. It's the last year of the Gen 6. When the new cars show up in 2022, everyone's getting the same basic car. The way technical alliances work may change, but for this gap year, and we already know, like Trackhouse is a new team. They have an alliance with RCR. We know Live Fast Motorsports has at least a strategic partnership with Stewart-Haas Racing for next year. We know 2311 Racing has a strategic partnership with Toyota and maybe Joe Gibbs Racing. A lot of teams that are introducing new cars next year have alliances with a bigger powerhouse organization, and Spire Motorsports would not be surprising if they weren't any different, forming an alliance with Hendrick Motorsports that could increase their competitiveness. From the sounds of it, I don't expect those cars to run better than 25th most weeks, but that still is perhaps a step in a positive direction, and that's why maybe a driver like Corey LaJoie, who's looking to upgrade over what he drove last year for Go Fast, that might be a great landing spot for Corey LaJoie. It's surprising that nothing has been announced just yet. From everything he said, Corey LaJoie plans on racing full-time next year. It sounds like a deal is done. They just have not announced it. I expect Corey LaJoie to end up in one of the two Spire cars. That second Spire opening is still a complete unknown. Early on, the Spire Motorsports owners were looking at Ross Chastain and or Justin Haley to fill those spots. Justin Haley's returning to Colleague full-time in Xfinity. Ross Chastain's going to Chip Ganassi on the Cup Series side of things, so neither of those drivers are available. Who Spire picks for that second spot will be extremely interesting. I mentioned Ty Dillon earlier. I have heard nobody seems to have heard any rumors or possibilities of where he's going. Maybe that ends up being a spot for Ty Dillon. I have no idea. As far as some of the non-chartered teams go Fast Racing, of course, is shrinking their operation. They're only going to run a few races next year. Reports suggest Ryan Ellis is going to be their driver. Nothing has been fully confirmed, but it looks like Ryan Ellis is going to be driving in NASCAR again in a very limited capacity, so look out for an official release perhaps there. Again, not confirmed, but that seems likely. We talked about this a few episodes ago, but with the recent news that NASCAR is effectively slashing money that's allocated to non-chartered teams next year, it does make me question how many non-chartered teams we will see at the track next year. There are 36 charters, which means we will see 36 cars at least in every race next year, but but how many teams are actually going to fill those remaining few spots? I mean, this year you had Gaunt Brothers Racing running the full schedule without a charter. You had MBM Motorsports with Timmy Hill running the full schedule without a charter. There have been rumors that Gaunt Brothers Racing may go back to a part-time schedule. That would not surprise me. Losing Daniel Suarez, who did bring a good amount of funding to that team this last year, might force their hand. I know a lot of you guys watching really like Timmy Hill. I have no idea what's going on with Timmy Hill. I'm sure Timmy Hill's going to race a lot of Xfinity races. You might see him in trucks occasionally as well. I'm sure he will race Cup next year, but will they run full-time again? I'm not sure. Hey, I'm sure like roofclaim.com really got their money's worth with that sponsorship last year when Timmy Hill won that Pro Invitational iRacing race at Texas earlier in the year. That got them a lot of exposure, so maybe they're perfectly happy funding that team for another year despite the less guaranteed money from not having a charter. Rickware Racing has also not confirmed their plans for next year. Now, Rickware Racing has a number of charters actually, so they are going to field some full-time cars next season, but we don't yet know who all the drivers will be and when, so still some questions there. I read off that list of drivers earlier that raced part-time last year. A lot of those drivers raced for Rickware Racing, and Rickware Racing right now has not really confirmed many of their plans for next season, so we'll see what happens, but rest assured, Rickware Racing will have a number of cars on the track each year, or each race. Now, I've mainly talked about the NASCAR Cup Series, but I do want to touch on the Xfinity and the Truck Series just a little bit. I mentioned earlier, it hasn't been confirmed just yet, but Riley Herbst, who raced for Joe Gibbs Racing this last year in Xfinity, is likely to replace Chase Briscoe at Stewart-Haas. When talking about Ty Dillon, again, I am really curious to see what happens with the Richard Childress Racing Xfinity car. Remember this last year, RCR went down to one full-time Xfinity car, and it was full of part-time drivers. Myatt Snyder ran about half the races, Anthony Alfredo ran the other half more or less. What's that team going to look like next year? Could that be a landing spot for Ty Dillon? Is there a possible chance that RCR will go back to a two-car Xfinity organization? That we don't know for sure just yet. There really are a lot of questions, especially when it comes to Ty Dillon, a driver who now has a few years of Cup Series experience, full-time Cup Series experience. But at the same time, Ty Dillon has never raced for anyone not named Richard Childress. I mean, even when he raced for Germain Racing in the Cup Series side of things, they had a close technical alliance with RCR. So it's hard for me to see Ty Dillon, a guy who has not done much winning in his NASCAR career, racing for somebody other than his grandfather. Time really flies. Dillon has 4 years of Cup racing experience now. He only has one Xfinity Series win in his entire career. So again, like I said, it's not like Ty Dillon is a can't-miss talent. I mean, I think he's competent. I think he's solid, but I don't see a team like Stewart-Haas or Junior Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing or any powerhouse organization in Xfinity taking a chance on him unless he brings some crazy amount of sponsorship, which we know, at least right now, he does not. So I feel like if Ty Dillon drives next year, it's going to have to be for a team affiliated with Richard Childress. Could it be an Xfinity opportunity? Could we see a second Xfinity team enter next year for RCR for Ty Dillon to drive? That is a possibility, but like I said earlier, there really have not been any conversations. There's not a whole lot of talk out there. Not many rumors about what Ty Dillon is doing next year. There's also some questions about like JD Motorsports' roster next year. They field a lot of cars in the Xfinity Series. I'm sure Ryan Vargas will be back in some capacity, whether that's part-time, full-time. Is BJ McLeod going to race for them next year when he's racing full-time in Cup? I'm not sure. You're going to see Jeffrey Earnhardt again. There's some questions around that team still. There's a few questions around some of the middle pack teams in the Xfinity Series. When it comes to the NASCAR trucks, we still actually haven't been able to confirm Thor Sports driver lineup for next year. I assume we'll see mostly the same guys, Johnny Sauter, Matt Crafton, Grant Enfinger, Ben Rhodes. There have been questions about Nice Motorsports as well. They've added Carson Hocevar to their team full-time. Ryan Truex announced this last week. He's racing full-time. I forgot to mention that earlier. Yeah, Ryan Truex is racing full-time for Nice next year. Is Ty Majeski going to return? Is Natalie Decker going to return? A lot of that is still not 100% clear right now. That's kind of the way this goes. I think the Cup Series teams solidify their lineups for next year, and then the Xfinity and Truck Series people, they kind of look at what's left. I mean, that's unfortunately kind of the way it works. Some of these teams, like we've seen Junior Motorsports jumped on it early, locking in Josh Berry, Sam Mayer for the 8 car next year. DGR Crossley promoting Haley Deegan to the Truck Series full-time next year. There's some of these teams that were locking drivers in early on, but others are waiting and biding their time. They're in no particular rush, especially with so many question marks still remaining as far as the beginning of next season. Will fans be allowed? In what capacity? How's sponsorship going to be handled? We've talked about that a little bit on the show recently because that's a huge question I think that a lot of Truck and Xfinity Series teams have before they lock in their plans. So we may not find out a lot of these drivers and who's driving what until January. I would not be shocked. Everyone's waiting for a clearer picture right now, but there you have it. In a nutshell, there's a current update as to where NASCAR silly season stands, who the biggest players are right now, what cars and rides rides or teams are still left available, who's looking for what are the rumors, what are the reports saying. That's a pretty basic overview right there of where NASCAR silly season stands right now. That's all I've got for today's episode. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think Corey LaJoie lands at Spire? What do you think is going on with Ty Dillon? Is he going to stay in Cup next year? Is he going to Xfinity part-time, full-time? Is he out of NASCAR next year? What do you think of Ty Dillon? I feel like there's going to be some interesting theories on that one. Maybe I'll come up with something really good. But that is all I have to talk about in today's episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR all throughout the week, even here during the off season. As always, a tremendous thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. I could not do this show without your continued support each and every month, so for that, I want to express my deepest appreciation. I've been working on some pretty big stuff behind the scenes that hopefully I'm able to share with you all fairly soon, so stay tuned for more. Out of the Groove, of course, is continuing throughout the week, so I will see you all again very soon. Have a great weekend, y'all. Take care.